Okay, so today we're talking about ratios and proportions and solving different story problems with proportions, okay? But the one thing I want you guys to notice is the difference between a ratio and a proportion. People tend to get those two mixed up. And notice that a ratio is something that compares quantities by division. So for instance, there is 12 inches in a foot, right? That is a ratio. A lot of conversion factors are ratios. Okay? A proportion is something that compares two ratios and it has an equal sign in it. So if you look at something and it doesn't have an equal sign in it, it's not a proportion. Okay? A cross product is a way to solve proportions. So, for instance, if I look at AB over CD and I look at the diagonals, AD is equal to BC. And notice it makes a cross. That's how they got that cross product. Down below here we have two proportions we want to solve. So we're going to take 10 and 3 and we're going to multiply them together. And 2 and x. So this is the same as saying 30 equals 2x. And then we just simply divide both sides by 2, so we have 15 equals x. This second one's a little bit harder, and the reason is there's two terms in the bottom and the denominator of this one. So basically, when you take this and multiply it together, it's going to be 2 times 9, 10 minus x. So you're going to just put a parentheses around that. Equals 11 times x. Okay? So 2 times 910 is 1820. And 2 times negative x is negative 2x. Equals 11x. If you add 2x to both sides, you get 1820 equals 13x. Okay, so 1820 divided by 13 is 140. So that's your answer on that proportion. I feel like the first part is pretty easy if it's given to you as a proportion, but the hard part is setting it up as a proportion, and when you're given a story problem, that's going to be the challenge. But on this one, you're noticing that we're talking about property tax in a house, and the value of the house, the assessed value, is $45,000. The tax is $600. So we're comparing assessed value and tax. So I'm going to call assessed value AV over tax. So we have one assessed value over tax 1, and we want to compare that to the assessed value 2 over tax 2. Okay? Notice that my AVs are on the numerator and my taxes are on the denominator. Okay, so make sure that they're written the same way. So if I look at my assessed value of my first house, it's $45,000. My tax of my first house is $600. And the assessed value of the second house is $112,000. And the tax on the second one, we don't know. That's what we're trying to find out. Pretty sure that these houses were not found in the Minneapolis area. A little cheap. Okay, so 600 times 112,000, that's the first cross product, equals 45,000x. So 600 times 112,000 happens to be 672 and 5 zeros. If I divide both sides by 45,000, I get x equal to 1,493 and 33 cents. If you guys ever pay any attention to DNR or anything like that, or if you're hunting, you're going to know that this is a big thing that we do in Minnesota is keep track of our population of deer so we know how many deer licenses to issue, or bears, or wolves, or whatever. And this is how they track the population. So, we don't know the total population of the animals in our area. And in order to find out that total population, what they do is they capture so many and they tag them. Sometime later, I don't know how many months or whatever, they'll capture so many again and look at how many tagged animals they have out of the total that they captured. When they do this, they can actually do a proportion to determine the total population of the animals in that area. Okay? So for instance, here we have a wildlife biologist catch and tag and then release 120 deer in the wildlife refuge. Okay? 2 weeks later, they observe a sample of 150 deer. That's the total of the sample, 25 of which are tagged. How would I set this up to find the total population of deer in the wildlife refuge? Yeah.
120 times 25, and that equals 150.
Yes. Yeah, right. So basically, you were saying that it's going to be 120. Well, 120 is the original number of tagged animals, right? Over X, we don't know the population. And then the new captured ones were 25 over 150. You're on the right track. Okay? So this was the original tagged. This is the new tagged, and this is the total that they captured the second time around. Okay, so if you multiply the cross products, you got 120 times 150 equals 25 times X. And 120 times 150 is 18,000. Equals 25X. And then I'm going to divide that by 25, and I have 720 deer. Okay? Now, in your homework, sometimes when you do this proportion, you might end up, say, I came up with 719.3. Can you have a 0.3 of a deer?
Yeah.
A living deer.
Yes.
So what I want you to do is when you see that, make sure you round it, okay? Either down or up, it doesn't matter. Okay?